Hi, friends, and welcome back to the Radiant You podcast, where we talk about what it means to live, lead, and love from a place of self love, purpose, and radiance. I'm your host, Lissa Cole, and I am so glad that you're here today because my guest is someone I've had the privilege of knowing for a very long time. I've seen her grow from the days when her kids were just babies. She's just, there's so many changes, so many different things that have happened. And she's a wife, a mom of four, accomplished entrepreneur, coach, and leader in our community. She owns many businesses, leads the Michigan Premier, and which is an elite girls AAU basketball club, and pours into the next generation of athletes. Not for profit, but as a way to give back. She is a woman of deep faith, and she radiates love and light in everything that she does. And on top of all of that, she and her husband are in a new chapter as he recently retired. We'll talk about how she's navigating that transition while still running businesses, leading teams, and living her mission. Andrea Cabana, welcome to the Radiant You podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Oh, it's an honor for you to be with me today and for us to have this conversation. Absolutely. So I always start by asking, what does radiance mean to you? So, Andrea, what does it mean to you?
I think, when you asked me to do this, I started really thinking about it. I'd never thought about it before, to be honest with you. And I think the biggest thing is everything that I do, I try to kind of show God's light, right? Like just try to emulate, what he would do and how he would do it, and try to just kind of be a blessing to those that I come in contact with, in many different ways. I think every story is a little bit different, but just try to be a blessing in some way to everyone.
Absolutely. Oh, that's a great definition of what that means to you. I think that's wonderful. How do you stay connected to yourself when life can be so busy for you?
I think it's a lot about being intentional. I'm a big believer in intentionality. So I try very, very hard. I don't always succeed, but I try very, very hard to really lay aside some time each day that's for me and time that I spend with God, or just in the silence sometimes, to be honest with you. My husband, and usually it's first thing in the morning. Especially when it's nice out, if I can get outside, on my deck or my porch, and just start the day by taking some time, and just get grounded in what the overall purpose and goal and what the day might bring. But I think that's just really important. I think that if you just start the day running, sometimes you get off track or sidetracked, or on the wrong track for that matter. So
Right.
I really try to be purposeful in that sense, where I start the day with God.
Absolutely. So those are some really great daily habits that you have personally.
Yeah.
Are there any family rituals that help keep that radiance alive in your home?
Well, I think that's evolved over time. When kids are small, I think it's easy to kind of carve out time each day to do something. As kids grow and they become their own humans with their own
Yes.
lives and things like that, I think it goes back to just really having to be intentional inside those moments. Especially for us, we have kids coming and going. Gracie is married and moved out. Avery is graduated and now back home. Joey will be leaving. Obviously Andrew's the baby, so he's always here. But we try to just be really intentional with making it a point to maintain those family connections, and those family relationships. And We do that a lot of different ways, but I think the biggest thing is we enjoy being, outdoors. So bonfires or movie nights or, things like that. Dinners, that's a big one for us that, that we have family dinners. And, I think that if you're not intentional about that, it's easy to lose it in the
Absolutely.
busyness that life is. And, I think once you start to sometimes lose things like that, it's hard to get it back. So, just making sure you're setting aside, that time to be together.
Absolutely. I strongly agree. Do you guys try and set up like weekly connection,
Oh,
having dinner together, or do you, I know that it can be hard. It can be
yeah,
so hard.
yeah,
As we've had our grandbabies, we have Gaga Papa Day every
yeah,
Friday.
yeah, which is awesome.
And it is, but oh my, it is very intentional,
Right.
and that I so can relate to that word intentionality.
Yeah.
That is just so important.
Yeah.
And if you don't,
Yeah.
it's not going to be there. But yeah, so do you guys do something where you're like, okay, we got to do this day or whatever?
So we don't have set days. To be
Yeah.
honest with you, Gracie is very good at this with our family. She likes to
Good.
plan. She's a planner, so she
Yep.
makes us all plan. So we'll find, in advance, we're going to do this day. So coming up, we're talking about, this weekend, we're going to have a bonfire. We're going on the boat, or we're again
Yes.
being intentional. I think it really helps that my family loves basketball. Everybody loves basketball. So,
Yes.
it revolves around that sometimes too, in the sense
Yes.
that, as the kids were playing college ball, we would travel to their games together. And so, it would be whatever kids I had with me, a lot of times my parents even, and we're in the car together for a few hours and that's where kind of the conversations just happen naturally.
Absolutely.
This year, Andrew will be playing and Avery will be home, so I know she's excited about that. So, again, there'll be some, just by default time that we get to be together. And I think it's, especially when you have kids going in a ton of different directions, when those opportunities arise, you just jump on them. Car
Absolutely. And
rides are huge.
oh my gosh, they
Yes, we're
are. They're
captive at that
precious.
point. It's a captive audience. Love
They are
you.
there. Absolutely. And it happens organically, doesn't it?
Right, right, right.
Absolutely.
Right. And I
Oh,
think there's
that's
a
good.
calmness that happens in the car too, because, even though obviously you still have the cell phones around, there's not the distractions of the other things that need to happen. So there's that calmness in the car and,
That's right.
I think that freedom just to speak, and especially if it's, one on one. Andrew and I have a lot of conversations in and out of school or basketball practice, or, it's a very natural, organic way to do it.
Absolutely. So, looking back, what are some personal life lessons that have shaped the way that you live today?
Oh my gosh. I think that there's there's nothing crazy that like stands out to me. It's more of just learning by mistake, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
We I was married very young, had kids very, very young, and as a result, I did a lot of growing up. My husband did a lot of growing up through that process, and I think that when you make mistakes in your life, that's when you kind of learn who you are and who you want to be, and as long as you have the ability to give yourself the grace to make those mistakes in those moments. I think that's a lot of times where the growth happens. And so there's certainly points, throughout my life where, I have made mistakes, and learned from them, certainly in
Right.
high school, certainly, what works and doesn't work inside my marriage, things like that. Even raising children, with kids, they're all so different and their personalities are so different and their needs are so different, trying to figure out what speaks to them and, how you can, most effectively reach them, to help them when they need help. And so, I think the biggest thing is just inside, recognizing that life is about failure. I mean, that just is a huge, I think, point that I stress in all aspects of my life, that nobody's perfect and everyone's going to fail, and the grace that you know that God gives us, and therefore we should give ourselves and we should give other people inside those moments. I think that's just where you grow individually, and your relationships just really blossom inside those moments.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness, I'm over here tearing up.
Oh, yeah.
Oh no, it resonates, and it's just it's beautiful. I often will say to my husband, it's just amazing what grace can do for us,
Right.
you know,
Absolutely.
and it's
Absolutely. And I think that's where the relationships become stronger. It is, when you make mistakes and, you take a wrong turn, or, you should have did something differently or whatever, the growth and that can happen inside of that. And then the strength that can come as those relationships just kind of grow together. It's nothing short of a miracle in a lot of times, but truly amazing. And when you look back on it, I think it's so evident, in particular, it's just so evident that God was a part of all of it. His plan is I've always had a strong belief that he has a plan, and sometimes we take detours, but if we stay connected to him, and know that he never leaves inside any moment, eventually you get there, right? Eventually
yes,
you get there.
eventually that humanness comes out, right?
Right, right.
Oh my goodness, Jess. So I have known you since your kids were little.
Yeah.
In fact, I was the preschool teacher for I think all of them.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And what a privilege that was. Oh my goodness. But
I feel the same.
what has been even more too, that's been a privilege, is just watching you grow into this amazingly radiant woman, and all the different things that I've been able to sit in the sidelines and watch you do.
Yeah.
It's remarkable. It's remarkable.
Thank you.
So that personal growth over time, I mean, because we've known each other for probably 20 some years,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and so to be able to sit alongside, and watch that happen, that's a privilege. And
Thank you.
so when you think back to that early Andrea,
Yeah.
uh, that mom in the trenches,
Yeah.
with babies, one on the hip, one,
Yeah.
whatever. What parts of her do you still carry with you today?
Um,
I think that's a tough
look,
question.
yeah. I think that, having kids young, and having kind of a lot of them, sometimes I feel like, I was so naive in so many things, and just trying to figure out, who I was as a mom, and, who I was as even a woman, outside of being a mom and being a wife. And because I never did, I graduated from Michigan State, but I never, had a career per se, so trying to figure out who I was in that sense. But I think that the biggest thing that has stuck with me straight through, or who I am or who I've always been, is I love the concept. I'm not necessarily an outward, expressive person or super social person, but I've always had this desire to help people. That's been a consistent sense. Oh gosh, I was very, very young, a young child, talking about wanting to be a missionary, so that's always been a consistent, and trying to figure out how to do that, in what way, what does that look like, knowing that I still have, the responsibilities of motherhood, and, and this is where I'm at, and being a wife, and, all those things. And so I think that that's the biggest thing that's kind of stuck with me as I've tried to navigate, growing up.
Yes.
So,
Oh, that's good. What would you say has been the hardest part about maintaining your radiance through all of that, through and also the different roles that you play?
it's definitely handling the busyness. I think it's really easy, to set important things aside, or neglect things that shouldn't be neglected when things get busy, and I think that it's important to know what your limit is, and sometimes when you have to say no, even though I'm not very good at that. I'm not very good at that. That's something that I kind of work on a lot. But, I think that's the hardest part, definitely, is making sure that you still keep the things that are most important at the forefront of everything that you're doing. And, I think that has to be God first, family second, and then you kind of go from there and figuring out how to balance it,
Absolutely.
and keeping the balance throughout it all. It's sometimes a challenge.
I talked with oh my goodness, it was a few guests ago, and we were talking about how balance kind of, to help us to stay radiant, it helps to look at it, changing the word from balance to rhythm. And it's like you get into this rhythm of things, and
Absolutely.
there's some truth to that. It's like balance. Oh my gosh, balance is like this miracle. Like we can
Right.
really do all this,
Right.
right? But it's cool to be able to look at the idea that, okay, this rhythm, like once we
Right.
get rolling with something,
Right.
it really is. It just kind of goes. It just,
Right.
and with God's help, we just keep moving.
Yes. Just
Yeah,
keep moving.
just keep moving.
We talk about it all the time. Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming.
That's right. Oh my gosh, yes.
Say it all the time.
Absolutely. Who or what has inspired you most on this journey?
Oh gosh, I've had so many people in my life over the years that I'm just so thankful for, who have done that in different ways. I'm a big believer in surrounding yourself with like-minded people. I think that's a big part of leadership too. I've always done that in all aspects of what I do. Is if you surround yourself with people that support you and that believe in you and believe in what you're trying to accomplish, that everyone kind of feeds into that. I don't know is that I have like one dominant person. Certainly my parents are a pivotal part of who I am. As a woman, as a basketball coach, my dad was used to coach with me,
Yes.
when I very, very first started, and I knew nothing, you know. My mom, obviously I'm very, very close to my mom. So they're first. And certainly my family, Chris is my biggest supporter. There's no doubt that, without him, I wouldn't be able to do, much of what I do, just because he is such a support system in my life. And then certainly my children, and then it kind of blossoms from there. I've been, really blessed to have, people that coach with me. I call it co-coaching. I don't call it my assistant coaches. And so,
Yeah.
so the men and women that have co-coached with me over the years have certainly, helped me evolve into who I am, as a person and as a coach, because it's so intertwined together. And then even with Premier, there are so many people inside that program that share my same vision and my same belief, and are as invested as much as I am, if not more, on some days. And so I think that it's just all of them together have just really over the years kind of made me into,
Yes.
the person I am. And, I think that it's just extremely grateful for, the opportunities that I've had throughout the years, and just the belief that, people have had in, not only me, but what we're trying to accomplish. And, it's just a good thing. It's a good thing.
It is a good thing. It is
Yeah.
a great thing. And I love how that just kind of moves us into speaking about Michigan Premier. You have built something really special. And I know that it wasn't just you. I know.
That's what I was just gonna say too. It was not just me. Not
I
just
knew
me.
that. But I believe that the foundation that you have
Yeah.
put into this. I mean, it's a business, but it's not a business in
Right.
that traditional sense, you know.
Right.
So, can you share a little bit of your heart and vision behind
Yeah.
it? Um, I know that there were many that were involved in the groundbreaking, right?
Yeah.
But tell me a little bit more about the heart and the vision that you had.
You know, what's funny is that I don't know as that was my original vision. It kind of evolved over time, and I think that's how you just really know that God's been involved in this, because I wasn't even really aware of it, and not even in the beginning. I knew I loved basketball. I knew I wanted to coach some basketball, and I certainly was. But as it started to evolve and it started to become this something bigger than we're just going to coach a basketball team. It started to become obvious that, okay, this really wasn't my idea. So whose idea was it? And I think it becomes very, very clear when you start to look at, what it's evolved into is that I think it's just very God driven. And certainly the basketball component of it is fun. Basketball is the language we speak. That's what I like to say, that, we love basketball, we speak basketball, basketball's fun, but the bigger picture behind it is so much bigger than basketball. And, we really look at, we're doing life with these kids and these kids' families and parents, and it's fun and it's exciting. And I think what we're most proud of is that we're building these young girls into, or helping build these young girls into strong, confident young women who will, take all of the life lessons that they learn through this, and become, the leaders of tomorrow, who whatever God has planned for them. But it kind it helps build them into that. And basketball is the vessel we use, and we love that for sure. And I think our young girls, they don't even really realize sometimes what's happening through it until they get out of it. But it's extremely rewarding to watch, girls grow through the process. And, it involves, obviously they have goals, and a lot of them have big goals and big dreams, and we support them in that. And, but, as they work through, developing and, and fighting through a lot of adversity at times, and learning how to handle that and what that means, watching them just blossom into these, sophisticated, beautiful, adult women who are, incredibly confident and incredibly successful, and, incredibly grounded in who they are is, for me, that's what it's about. That's where I catch my breath sometimes,
Yeah.
and when the oldest group is now kind of through college even. And when they come back home and they show back up at camps, or clinics, or even just shoot me a text sometimes, it's like, for me, that's what it is. That's
Absolutely.
what makes me
Yeah.
catch my breath, and
Absolutely.
they're amazing. They're just
Yes.
amazing young women.
Yes, because they have had an amazing woman walk alongside them. And to me, that, as you're sharing all of that, it goes back to what you put out into them. They know that, I mean, you felt that they were important, right? Important enough to
Absolutely.
invest time in them.
Absolutely.
And that alone sometimes is
Yeah.
all that they need.
Yeah.
But what's so great is when they come back and they realize how important this was for them.
Right.
You made an amazing impact on them. And whether they realize it or whether you realize it, it's something that the people, again, us all that are sitting on the sidelines, not necessarily in the gym, but we're sitting in the sidelines of this journey, and we can see that. And so it's so great to hear you say that, your heart gets full when,
Yes.
when they come back and
It
they
does.
they
It does.
recognize it and you recognize it. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute, this is what this is about.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And to watch the younger ones start to go up through it, and as they take the steps through it, it's a lot of fun. It's just a lot of fun.
Yes.
And the
Oh, I
basketball's
love
fun
it.
too.
I love that word, fun.
Yeah.
For sure. So it's interesting. You have. I know that there's not any like day to day type involvement per se in your franchise business that you're doing or businesses,
Yeah.
but there's I know you, I think well enough to know that you would not have invested time or money into something that didn't also align with what your values, what your belief system is all about. And so when I look at Michigan Premier and then look at your tropical smoothie, I look at that and I'm like, okay, that tropical smoothie must be really cool because I mean, and
Yeah.
I know that it's not, it's not the day-to-day
Right.
everyday, business,
Yeah.
but what about it?
Yeah.
What made you want to get involved in that? Was it similar to something like, that their belief system or their values were really connecting with yours?
I think that when we kind of started to go down that road, the big thing was Chris and I knew we wanted to diversify a little bit. And,
Yeah.
you know, we didn't really know what
So
that
smart.
meant. Yeah, we didn't really know what that meant at the time. We just knew that we kind of wanted to. Um, and so when we started down that journey, trying to find, something that kind of fit, you know, what would be us, what's us, who are, what are we?
Yeah.
And we try to be very healthy. We try to be, eat healthy. And, to be honest with you, we came across them at a basketball tournament with our kids and we were like, well, that's what, we were eating there. And so,
Yes.
so that's kind of how it evolved. And, again, just being really God led. Like
Yes.
it kind of popped up. We're fortunate enough that my father-in-law, is involved in it with us,
Good.
and they've kind of just taken off. And I don't want to say they're easy, but it's a huge, just, you can just tell that it was God driven. It's something that helps us certainly, with the things that we do in our life. And we don't have to be involved on a day-to-day basis. We have
Right.
been blessed
Good.
enough to have a district manager, a regional manager, who's phenomenal. And he does align with everything that we are and everything
Oh,
that we believe in. And he does as well. And his story is awesome too. He actually started out as a crew member, with our very
love it.
first store, and you know, kind of the same conversation that you and I had, previously. He just right out of the gates within the first day, Chris and I were like, he's awesome. He just kind of
Yeah.
had a glow about him, and
Oh,
he
love
kind
it.
of, moved up with us, and honestly learned as we did because we didn't know anything, about it. And so, as we were learning, he was learning, and he runs them for us, and he does a phenomenal job.
Oh,
So,
that's so great. That is
yeah,
so great
yes,
that you also align, and you
right,
knew it. You just
right,
knew it. And I
right.
have to say that as I was going through this, I remember years ago in preschool, you would come into the preschool and you would be assisting that day or whatever it might have been, one of our board meetings even. But you would bring in your green shakes.
Yeah,
And I'll never forget it. Whether it's a shake or a smoothie or whatever it was, but at that
yeah,
time,
yeah,
20 some years ago, who
yeah,
knew, right?
yeah,
And
I know.
so as I'm thinking about, your business, I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah,
Gee,
nothing, not much has changed.
that's right.
Not much has changed. I am a creature of habit in a lot of sense.
Well, but you couldn't stop along the way to grab one of those on the way to preschool. You made them
Right,
yourselves at home.
right.
And I'll never forget it. I think I even wrote down the ingredients one day because I wanted to, it was, again, inspiring. I
Oh,
mean, Andrea, always, I'm like, well, wait a minute, how did you make it so green,
yeah, yeah,
So I'll just never forget that. And so it was just a really great way for me to kind of relate to
yeah,
what you're doing, and boy, did it really, it seems anyways,
Yeah.
resonated with you
Yeah.
to do that. So
It's funny. Yes, it's true. I mean,
oh, I love it. And I know that you and Chris and the kids are all, trying to be very healthy, and that's a great
yeah,
way to do it for
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
So, and we know that owning multiple businesses is really no small thing. Oh my goodness. And we had talked earlier about, trying to balance or find a
yeah.
rhythm. Are there times when you have to kind of regroup, and I know that you have some daily practices that help you to do that. But other times where you have to just kind of wait a minute, does this really align? I have to really ask myself as you go forward. And with Chris just retiring, and I mean, wow, what a big step for his family and
Yes,
for you and
yes.
him. And so again, I mean, you don't have to tell tons of details at all, but it's amazing that you guys have been able to get to this point,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
awesome.
It's just, again, I think, I think Chris would agree with me that we really give God all the glory here. That is, things have, you know, when you follow God's lead, I think things just fall into place. And, not that it's always easy, because it certainly hasn't been, it certainly hasn't been, but I think that you can just really see God's presence everywhere inside of this. Selling the dealership and him retiring is, it was the right time, and I think that there's been conversations in the past, and it was like, do you know when the right time is? And it just became obvious that this was the right time, and that's how you know that God's involved. And I think that we're on a new adventure. We're
Definitely.
in we're in new territory for sure. But he he's Chris is my best friend. I mean, we do everything together anyways, and so this is just allowing us more of that. And I think
Oh,
when
that
you
is so
find
great.
it is. And when you find rhythm, and, and you're trying to balance things, that's what he and I have always done. That has been a consistent or a staple forever, is that he and I have just always, supported and helped each other in every aspect, and got it done per se. Find a way. We're going to find a way, and we just get it done. With his retirement, that obviously just makes that a little easier. That takes a little
Absolutely.
pressure off, obviously. And then it gives us a little bit more freedom to do some things that we haven't done. Because again, getting married young, having kids young, we missed out on some of, those things that we didn't get to do. And so, we're excited to maybe do some of those things now too.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Well, I'm excited to see where all that goes,
Yeah. Yeah.
and how that all works out.
Yeah.
I'm just thrilled that you guys are able to do that,
Thank
and be
you.
able to have more time to
Yes.
find the rhythm, right? I
Right,
mean, to be
right.
able
Well,
to
and time
do
that's the biggest gift, right? I mean, that's the biggest gift. And and making it or creating it or saving it, or or whatever, that sometimes is the challenge. And so when you have a little bit of extra, it's nice.
a little bit of extra time to be able to spend with your best friend.
Right.
That is pretty
Right.
great. That's a wonderful blessing.
Right. Right.
Absolutely. Love it.
Yeah.
So, I know that we talked earlier about how the girls, whether they come back from college or whether they move on to other things,
Yeah.
but they really, it's a reward for you to see them. And I want to just touch base on that one more time, and then we're going to move into something different. But do you have a particular story of anyone particular? You don't have to do names or anything, but really seeing, um, a story that really captures the reward of seeing a girl progress into the next level through your very much valued,
Yeah.
Michigan premiere.
I don't know if I have any necessarily one player that stands out to me. Certainly the first team that I coached, what I always call the flagship team of Premier,
Yeah.
that went through Premier is in some of those very first players, they hold a very special place in my heart, being the first ones. And I think a large part of it is again, we made a lot of mistakes in the beginning, trying to navigate what this needed to look like. And so just looking at each one of them, and all of their stories are just so different. One of them, but the success that they had, the story of fighting through getting to the next level and fighting through the adversity, and the success that they have, kind of reaped the benefit from all that is, I think, what's amazing. And they're all so different. We have, I have one that, had a ton of success in college, played right out of the gates, was all conference and highly successful, but, had some struggles because her team struggled sometimes. And, as an athlete, that's sometimes difficult when your team is struggling and struggling to get wins and things like that. And so, she battled through that, and had some great accomplishments on the end of it with some different awards that she was, earning as she was graduating, and, has now moved on and has a great GA position at a Division I school. So it's awesome. And she wants to go into coaching. So you watch, kind of what her story is and how she evolves, and and she wants to coach. And, and that to me is, I think that's amazing. And she will be amazing. I mean, an amazing coach. There's another one that was just home this summer. She actually went further away. She was on a good team, and, had some great accolades. I think she hit some great benchmarks playing basketball, and, she's now done and she's going to be a GA teacher. She is going to teach at the college level. And so, she's just super excited about that. I have other players that, I think that when you move on to the next level, there's always going to be adversities and things that you have to figure out. It's I always tell everybody, you don't know until you know, and it's
Exactly.
challenging, and it's different everywhere, but there's challenges everywhere. And, as you work through the challenges and the adversities of trying to figure out how you fit in and who you are inside that world. And, it's always going to be not about who I am as a player, but what can I do to help the team? What can I do to make the team better? And, when they navigate that and figure it out and come out on the other side, it's exciting. I mean, Avery winning the national championship was, she's got a lot of great memories, people that fed into her, and that was just kind of like the final, excitement at the end. And, that is she'll remember forever. And so I think they all have just really unique stories, as they all kind of forged their own way.
Absolutely.
Um,
So many different girls along
yeah,
the way that you have touched. What would you say? Each of them is unique, like you
yeah,
said, but what would you say would be the, like, one main core,
yeah.
some core or one thread that might just weave into each one of them?
I think I am a big believer in positivity, and, understanding that failure is a part of all of this process. I think that sometimes, with athletics, um, a lot of kids want it or expect perfection, and they're really hard on themselves, or their coaches can be hard on them, or, and certainly there's a time and a place to, to really, hone in on an athlete. But I think the big picture just really is that, the love, the genuine, we talk about, loving each other. And then, from a coaching standpoint, the building in and the positivity, and the encouragement that comes through this, and the acceptance of failure throughout all of this is huge. I think that that is, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of ways to accomplish it, but for me, I think that that is the only way that I know how to instill confidence and help, develop young ladies into strong young women. And I think that that understanding that failure is part of the process, is a piece that sometimes is missed, and I talk about it all the time, all the time. I also think that I'm a big believer in your words create, and so if we are constantly speaking negative, that's what you're going to get out of it, in any aspect, in life. But so we talk a lot about positivity, and again, there's a time and a place to critique, and and to point out what needs to be fixed and changed. But I think that it's we stay positive a lot. We focus on what we're doing well while we're trying to fix the things that we're not doing well. So
Oh, I love that thread.
yeah.
I love that. So you recently, oh gosh, now I don't even remember how many years ago, but you shifted a little bit and you
I
went
did.
from girls
Mhm.
and then started coaching boys at the high school level. How, what led to that shift?
Again, it was never planned. That was never in
Wild.
my plan. I don't even know if I ever had a plan for anything, to be honest with you. It was never in my plan
Right.
to coach boys. It was never in my plan to actually even, change school districts. I was very happy, and things were great, and the opportunity just kind of presented itself. And a few people reached out, which kind of sparked my interest. Like, at first I was like, oh, goodness, no. And then I was like, well, maybe, like, as
Wait
I,
a
yeah,
minute.
maybe, as I kind of started thinking about what that meant. And, I think a growth mindset is so important. Um, in all walks at all stages of life, and I think if you're not growing as an individual and as a human, um, what are you doing, like,
Agreed.
and so for me, I love the concept of being challenged, and so I knew that that would be new. Basketball's basketball, but I knew it would be a new challenge and a new, experience for me to try to navigate with boys. And so it definitely sparked my attention or sparked my curiosity. And as I kind of started to think about it, again, I think that, it's, God driven. I think that
Absolutely.
I believe in God opens and closes doors, and when doors close, even if you want to walk through them, that's God closing a door, and you have to recognize that. And when they open, sometimes you just have to take a leap of faith, and even if you're not sure, you don't know, believe that God opened that door and jump through,
There you go.
not knowing what the other side's going to look like. So that's really what that was. And it's been 3 years, going in the fourth year now, and
Okay.
it's been fun. There's been challenges, and I certainly had to figure things out, and I've made mistakes, and but it has been, it's been fun, and I've again been surrounded by people that have just been extremely supportive, just extremely supportive.
That
So.
is so great. That is so
Yeah.
great. So, was there anything that surprised you about that transition?
Um, you know, I don't think anything necessarily surprised me, because I think that I had, when you make a change like that, people's opinions kind of come out of the woodwork sometimes,
Oh,
and
yes.
so I heard lots of opinions about what could happen. So I don't think anything surprised me. It was actually a fairly easy transition. I would say, I think that I had a lot of people, that kind of were warning me that boys, maybe weren't as easy or as coachable or as, things like that. And I just haven't found that to be true at all. I think that at least the guys that I have had have been amazing. They're great kids. They want to learn. They want to win. It's been just it's been a lot of fun. A lot of fun. So I don't think
It's
anything surprised me other than maybe the fact that it has been kind of easy.
okay, maybe,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Well, I would bet too that it's been easy because you you went into it with just, okay, we're going to give this a try and
Right.
we're going to make this work. And there's going to be, you're going to find success there because of your intentionality.
Yeah.
Because you know that, yeah, there's going to be some things along the way that are going to be bumps and bruises, but
Right.
you had a different mindset,
Yeah.
and it's like, okay, people can talk all around that they want, all around
Right.
you, but
Right.
it's just a different, okay, it's just boys, girls.
Right.
Okay, but what's amazing is it's you, and you get to, you know,
Yeah.
still use the same values, still use the same mindset, and the, just all of what you believe to be true
Right.
in that program, just like you do any other program.
Right.
And so there's
Right.
success there.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that, again, basketball is the language we speak, and
Yes.
so,
Yes.
we have the same goals in mind. And, honestly, I let the guys set the goals and then I help them reach their goals. That's always kind of been my strategy. And so
Yeah.
it's, from the start, they understand that this is their team. This is about them, and I'm here to support them, and in the best way that I know how. And I certainly brought over my positivity. That's a non-negotiable for me. But they bought in. And right out of the gates. I mean, I certainly think that the success that Grass Lake had and those ladies had helped. I think I came in with a little bit of, they had a little bit of faith in me when I came in, but
Yes.
they've bought into the positivity, and we speak things into existence. And I think that they're able to play fearless, and I think that's a big thing, in success, is being able to play fearless and not afraid of making a mistake. And hey, you're gonna make mistakes and we're gonna move on. And we have some words that we use, next play, next possession. We talk about being where our feet are all the time. And
Yes.
it seems to be working. you know So
I would say
each year's a new year. So we're coming into a new season, so
absolutely. Absolutely. Oh my gosh. And I love, it's like just coaching alone can, I mean, and obviously, my husband's been coaching
Yeah.
for 43 years. This is his
Yes.
43rd season.
Good
And
goodness.
so I know, right?
That's a long time.
That's a long time. But what's so great is we're right in the middle of camp right now, and I
Mhm.
get to stand back and again on the sidelines, right? And
Right.
and I don't care if it's the kitchen or if it's the team building or whatever I might be
Right.
doing. But I get to stand back and see what life lessons come of it.
Mhm.
And every single thing that you just said, those are life lessons, not just for basketball,
Right.
not in my situation, not just for football.
Right.
It is life lessons.
Right.
And what you get to do
Right.
is you get to show them, be the example, teach them these life lessons, and for them to take it, boy, girl, I don't care, they get to take it.
Right.
And I mean, what an honor that we all have to be able to do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's truly a blessing.
Yeah.
It's fun, it's rewarding, but at the end of the day, it's truly a blessing.
Absolutely. So, between business coaching and raising a family, what leadership lessons stand out most to you?
Oh, goodness. I think leadership is a huge part of coaching. It's a huge part of coaching. I think it's a huge part of, you know, any program or business that you kind of oversee. And, I again, with leadership, I think the most important thing is having faith and trusting those people that surround you to do their thing. We all have different strengths and weaknesses, and so if we can surround ourselves by people who kind of fill in for our weaknesses, then now we're twice as strong. And so that is in every aspect, whether it be with my varsity teams or Premier. I try to bring in people that share the same values, are like-minded, and I believe in what they can do, and I trust in what they can do, and then just let them do it and support them in anything they need, but let them kind of shine in what they do. And I think that's really been the recipe that has worked. I have some phenomenal coaches in Premier. I don't consider myself honestly a leader of them because they all know that it's their team. We all already share the same philosophies and the same goals, and so I trust them to just kind of do their thing, and they do, and that it's amazing. Again, it works. So. But I also think that, with leadership, communication is huge. I think that the ability to not only communicate but listen is a huge component of it. I think everyone wants to be heard. And I think that the brainstorming that comes through that, I'll always believe that 2, 3, 4, 5 heads are far better than one. I will always believe that. And so that is really kind of what I do in all aspects. Even at Chelsea, I have some assistant coaches and, in some middle school coaches, but I view us all on an equal playing field, and, they have just as much of a voice as I do. I lean on them heavily in lots of different situations, and again, it works,
It
So,
does, yeah. Again, what a great example of leadership for them as well. To
right,
know that, first of all, you believe in them,
right,
and secondly, you trust
right,
them,
right.
and I think that's huge for a leader.
Yeah,
Absolutely,
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So your faith is such a core part of who you are.
Yeah.
How does your relationship with God shape how you approach both your business and your family? I know we've touched on that a little bit, but how do you keep that faith active?
I think that, again, it's for me, it's about the growth, right? Like I was raised in a church. I've always known, I've always known God. I've always known the stories, and when you're raised in a church at a young age, you have the songs and you have all that. And so certainly, I've been saved for a very, very long time, but I've also, made a lot of mistakes since I became saved. And I think the personal walk that I have with Jesus is, it's similar to kind of who I am, and kind of the way I live my life, and the fact that it's just I view it very real and very grounded. So for me, it's really about the relationship that I have with him. Um, I don't, I don't do like the ritual, like there's like I go
Right.
to, I believe in the relationship. So, when I talk to
Yes.
God, it's just I'm talking to, my best friend. I'm talking to, God,
Mm.
and I try to find spaces where it's quiet, where I can hear him. And we talk a lot inside our family here with my kids about, hearing God's audible voice. I've never heard God's audible voice, but there's other ways certainly that he shows himself, that his presence is very, very evident. And I think that a lot of times it's when things are quiet and still, and just making sure that you find that time so you can continue to have that relationship, and to build that relationship, and to grow inside that relationship, so you have the ability to hear him when he is guiding you, and when he is nudging you, or, when he is pulling you back sometimes, especially when times get hard, because certainly when things are going well and everything's wonderful, everything's easy, similar
Sure.
to a basketball game, right? When you're winning, it's easy. We're all, leaders and high energy, but,
Right.
when times get challenging or difficult, or, you're walking through, some dark areas, um, some that's when, sometimes you wonder, am I going to hear him? And I think that's when, seeking him is so important. And so being able to stay attached and stay grounded and stay in a relationship inside those moments is I think huge.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. Right. Yeah. Shine. Just shine. Yeah. Yes. Oh my goodness, Andrea. Thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing your heart and your light with us today. I know that our listeners will walk away inspired, not just by what you've accomplished, but by the way that you've done it, with your faith, love, a heart to give back, and an entrepreneurial just spirit that creates impact beyond business. Friends, here's the radiant reminder for today. Your life's work isn't just about what you achieve. It's about the love you give, the light you carry, and the courage to keep showing up in every season. So keep shining in your own unique way, because the world needs your glow. That's it for now. Go and be your radiant light and your radiant you. Shine your light. Bye bye.